Welcome to Living Web Farms. I'm thrilled to be doing this. I've been inspired by the Todd's work now for well over 20 years. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens with this pond. People probably have read the description of the class and all that. Johnathan's done this all over the world. Some remarkable results everywhere. His dad's new book is a great read. I highly recommend it. Healing the Earth, is that what it's called?
Healing Earth.
Healing Earth, yeah. Really very exciting. And let's just get to it.
All right, so this has evolved a little bit. So basically, we decided, we're going to try and build a do-it-yourself floating island. And at the first course, John is like, well, have you thought about Kapok for buoyancy? I was like, of course I haven't. No, I said, what's Kapok? He said, Kapok is this fiber that's really buoyant that they used in the World War II life vests. And so we're like, well, let's look into that. So we're trying that one. So what this evolved to is we're making what they call a floating wetland, or what we call restorers, but it's a matrix for plants, roots to dangle in the water and to clean the water, and for the periphyton, the layers of slime molds and bacteria and algae that, or bacteria and fungi that can outcompete the algae for nutrients in the water. And so you can use plant roots and the associated periphyton to get really clean water. And it's really efficient means of managing water. And so Patrick started gathering materials, and we came together with a materials list, and then Richard and John and myself and Patrick sort of looked at the materials, and yesterday designed and started constructing the natural materials, no plastic. We got a few bright nails in it, but there's no plastic, and all the buoyancy is going to be from bamboo and Kapok. And so where we're at right now with that is we're 3/4 built. We wanted to finish the last quarter, but we figured we'd let you guys in on that one. And then we're going to finish that, flip it, and plant it, put it on the low buoy, and launch it after planting, and that'll probably be in a few hours. And then Richard's going to present a little bit. We're going to talk about, and this is all very collaborative with all of you and your input, but we're going to talk about circulating water. How do we both do it DIY efficiently, because we really want to move as much water as possible across these plant root surface areas. Ecological design around water is very simple. You really want to just optimize your biological and dynamic surface areas and increase the amount of water flow over that using the least amount of energy. And any way we can think of doing that isn't wrong, right? And so different and we also want to have different, so if we can swing the water through the bottom of the pond where it's anoxic, that's another ecology and surface areas that we can go through. And then we go through the aerobic root zones, and we can get amazing results, including like we documented at the Eco Machine at the Omega Institute that we're removing 19 out of 20 endocrine disruptors to non-detect, which conventional wastewater treatment isn't doing. And it's not because we're brilliant scientists or detail-oriented engineers that are thinking of very specific ways of removing endocrine disruptors. We're just saying, hey, let's throw as many ecologies in there and move the water through there as much as possible using the least amount of energy. And then we very scientifically use a turkey baster from different areas to inoculate these ecologies, and they self-organize and they do it all themselves. So it's just providing that platform for nature to do this amazing job. And it will, and it's just optimized surface area and flow. And so this is the really boring part. So we should get to the shop now. So what we're going to do, and then the third thing that we're going to try and do is, based on some results of an accidental thing that we did at a system we did in Grafton, Massachusetts for the EPA to remove petroleum hydrocarbons from the water, is it was the first time we intentionally introduced fungi, the sixth kingdom of life, to our treatment process, and there we just dripped it through, spreading mycelia, and that exuded an enzyme which broke down the petroleum hydrocarbon chain. But once it fruits, it doesn't exude that enzyme anymore, so we had to throw it away and put in new mycelia, so we chucked it on the bank, and we chucked it on the floating islands. And then, a few months later, Hurricane Sandy came, and everywhere that was conventionally stabilized with grasses and netting and straw swabs, or no, what are they called? Mat, yeah, and it just all washed away. But that was stabilized with the mycelia. It just was completely pristine. And then it's also just this living filter that's always just sitting there filtering. So we got a bunch of my spent mycelia bags here today, a hoe and some wood chips. And we're going to try finding an area of the bank that looks like it's a little bit eroded and just try and get that in. We've harvested all of our plants from different projects that Living Web is doing here using, John can get into this hopefully a little bit later on today, but different bioswales, filtration ditches. What is your term for the one we harvest, that bioswale we harvested out of? Bioswale. Okay, and so, but this the wetland plants that they've got here we've harvested from, and we're going to be obviously planting, but I think we can take the leftovers, and where we mix up our wood chips and spent mycelia, we can take some of those wetland plants and get the whole mycorrhizal gang going to stabilize a piece of this. And hopefully we have time to do that all today. Let's go plant that floating wetland. Okay, so this is what we talked about, and I would say this is the first natural, but I think that the Aztecs and the Chiampas were making natural material floating islands a little bit before this, by a year or two. So this material's evolved very organically, and the only thing that we didn't just gather was this cedar right here, and now we know where there is some cedar, but we just couldn't get that done in the time frame that we needed. We were going to use hemlock or cedar or something that was going to be nice and rot resistant for as long as possible. And so this is dimensional lumber, but everything else has been gathered on Living Web land with the exception of the kapok here. And where did that come from, Patrick?
Carolina Marine Designs in Siwa.
And do you know where it's from?
I think it basically comes from someplace like Indonesia or Malaysia. I think it's one nation where most of it comes
Looks like it make great
What do I
insulation.
know?
Yeah, I was thinking great, good replacement for down as well, or, anything like that.
Part of the plant is that?
I think it's a seed pod. We're just learning about it. Actually, John had the idea at the last class to use it for buoyancy, and we were able to,
Perfect. That's from a plant? A plant?
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, it really is. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the kapok on that side, and we're going to flip it, and we're going to load. We're going to lay down a layer of coir, and then hopefully this rain will let up a little bit. Then we're going to start planting it, and we're going to all carry it out to a lowboy trailer, and then we're going to take it down to the pond and launch it, and that will take up a good bit of our afternoon, and then we'll have time hopefully to do the riparian restoration business and do a little wrap up in the classroom there at the school. So, where's John?
Right here.
Oh, there you are. Do we have the 3 slender pieces of bamboo to do this one yet? And,
We'll get 3.
cool. Let's do that in the kapok, and we'll start doing that, and then we'll get it flipped. The other thing we're going to experiment with is usually with commercial floating islands, you got 4-inch planting holes that are very. And now we've got like different kinds of coir, so we're going to just try different planting strategies, and we're not going to be as elevated as we are with our planting surfaces. So I think we'll be able to have quite a bit of fun with this.
Maybe too short.
Yeah, just a bit. We might have painted ourselves. Yeah. I'm just going to.
Clean up more?
Yeah, if we can.
Yeah.
Then I'll go out and get the rest of the kapok. So all we did was take the kapok from the plastic bags that was delivered in, stuff it into these burlap bags, which were leftover seed bags, and then put a double barrel, and then we just put a wire twist on the end to hold it back. And then we were going to use synthetic twine to hold it in, and just the buoyancy is going to hold it in place. But then we decided that we could use the end pieces that we didn't use for buoyancy of the bamboo to kind of weave it in to place. And we don't have this part down to a graceful science yet. Actually, it's.
You want to go in?
Yeah, we'll just go right in here. I have to go to you a little ways more. Yeah. A little more.
We can beat down the
If you didn't have access to bamboo, where would you get this fresh bamboo from?
Where would you get the fresh bamboo?
Basically, anybody, you can get bamboo. You can look at Craigslist or look around. Yeah, it's mostly a nuisance in our society.
Yeah, and I know it
People want
grows.
to get rid of it.
It grows as far north as Maine, right? And
Yeah, it grows all the way
Yeah,
up.
yeah. I think we're okay with flipping this. I'm okay with that one piece holding the K-Pock in.
Okay.
And so, what we need to do is to sort of orchestrate a few people to flip it and a few people to push the tables in. No, we don't have to push the tables in. They're fine as they are. And now, when the rain stops, we'll start running out and getting plants. So let's.
One side.
Yeah. Let's go towards Richard. Yep, and then. So this is the first Gilligan's Island.
It's a tiki bar.
Oh yeah, and if you don't want to really, if you lose interest in your pond, this is going to be a really good tiki bar for sure. So this is the planting area, primary planting area here, because we had to allocate this to buoyancy. But what I really want to do is like push these aside and get little planting plugs with the jiffy pots in here, make sure we get some plants in here. And I don't really want to take charge of the planting. I think everybody can do it. Just keep trying. We want the taller plants, like the cattail towards the middle, and then the smaller plants towards the edge. And I think the sedge is going to be the primary. The sedge and the cattail are the primary driver, but the arrowhead is going to be a really nice plant too. And we'll see in some of the trays there's some creeping plants. I think one's a bacopa and one I couldn't identify, but I know I should have been able to identify it. I just couldn't. So the creeping plant's more towards the edge. We're going to lay down, do we have a decent pair of scissors here? We're going to lay down some coconut coir, and I think we can just take what we have right there and go back and forth here, and that's going to be perfectly adequate for this matrix. So I think we'll just lay this down, and then we'll do everything else on top of that.
Did you say bacopa plant?
Yes.
Is that native to here?
I don't know if it's native. We found it here. But I know it's mostly native to California and Hawaii where I've run into it as a native, and I might have been misidentified it too. So we're going to take pictures of them all and make sure that they're identified, and probably send that out in the.
Do you want me to take some daylily?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think that if we go this way, I can just do it in 2 strips, and then.
You think that's good?
I kind of think no lap.
No lap.
Yeah, no lap.
And may I ask you, you mentioned that you work many different places, so do you then have to very carefully choose what plant material you're putting in so that it is native to your area?
Mostly, yes, especially in natural waterways, but a lot of my business is in artificial lakes in California now, and then I have to pick my plants carefully to please the HOAs, and with very little consideration to nativeness or anything like that. And
Those of us who are putting it onto our own piece of
yes,
land.
make sure it's all native. Yeah, absolutely, and I think I really kind of fell short on the plant identification because I wasn't sure, and we didn't have a whole lot of time between gathering them last night and finishing our identification. But I think as follow-up to this, we'll make sure every one of the plants that we put on this will be properly identified, and so it can be replicated.
Yeah, and your native plants on your land already like to grow there, so they're acclimated. And then it's basically they proliferate and they're free.
And do you have a lot of problem with invasives through here? Any particular plant material that one should
Not any
be watching
wetland
out
plants.
for? No?
Some of the other
Okay, excellent.
plants we do.
I think cattails can be invasive sometimes. At least
Yeah,
They can definitely crowd out,
yeah.
they're native.
plantings. They're native, yeah, but
They're opportunistic.
Yeah.
and they play a part. They build up biomass really quickly.
The cattails, I was told by a biologist, will take over my pond.
They can. Yeah. If you have a pond and you don't want a lot of cattails, don't put them there.
Okay.
There's sedges that you can use in lieu of cattails, and bulrush, which is also I think native to here, although I don't know my Carolina plants well. Bulrush is much less aggressive and it has the same kind of robustness as cattail.
It's called a bulrush.
Bulrush. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this one's the soft stem bulrush. That's a native one.
Okay.
But it's similar growth
Heard
pattern. It
that.
grows really tall.
Bulrush. And what about lily pads? Are they also?
They're not native and they will take over if your pond's shallow. Anything that is under 3 feet, they'll spread to if you got soft bottom and everything like that. And so
What 3 feet is their limit?
it's supposed to be, but I've seen them take over a 6-foot pond before and just choke it out. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. So, let's start planting. There's a bunch of jiffy pots and coir planters, and I think if we just start. Where's our mycelia? Do you know, John?
I have no idea.
Yeah, we put, the only metal in here is the 4 corner flagpoles, and then these shiny nails, which will eventually rust, and the iron will add to the mix. So, we could have bound this with twine. We could have used strapping like the electrical wires are held on with. There's a lot of ways to do this, or wired them, but you know, this really landed on this because it was simple and just hammer nails over it, not a big deal. Yeah, they're all solid. And as the plants grow, of course, they're gonna bind all this stuff in even more.
What do you think the life of this will be?
That is a good question. Of course, the frame is probably going to be quite a while. The bamboo, probably quite a while as well. I don't know about, you know, well, probably a better thing to ask Johnathan, because the plants, you know, once they're established.
Is there a magic formula for the amount of variety of plants?
No, you want as much biodiversity as you can get, but then you end up with what nature gives you, and you know, something like a cattail will take over. But sometimes there's just like little niches, and we'll put in a creeping plant like a bacopa, and it'll just take over a corner. And one of the cheat plants I use, which isn't native but is Mentho aquatica, and that'll sometimes just take over a corner of a thing. And so actually Mentho aquatica might be native to here, it might not be, but you know, checking with like those are opportunistic plants that can spread, and so definitely check and make sure that they're not invasive to your area. But again, it's the same philosophy of throw everything at it. The known ones like bulrush, which we don't have today, but bulrush, cattail, and then the wetland sedges, and you throw them in. Then you try and throw things like lilies in for aesthetics, as well as like add the diversity, and then they sort of organize themselves any way they want. And you know, some of the stuff like the arrowheads, and if you're putting in stuff like elephant ears into different places, they just shoot tumors. Like even with the matrix of the floating up, the plastic matrix, which is like an abrasive thing, like your hands hurt after working with it, they throw shoots through that, and they just grow up, pop anywhere. They just spread through it. It's just phenomenal how when the plants want to go somewhere, they go where they want to go.
So the roots will just grow right through this map here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like for in here, I think we should just like work in the jiffy pots. So we have a bunch of jiffy pots, and here we can kind of just do, you know, we have the different coir things and different jiffy pots, and just so. And remember, I mean, we have a whole lot of planting materials, but really a plant every square foot is going to spread into everything. But you know, I think I'd like to keep those clusters of sedges and the cattails like right here, and if we can work up down the middle of these two as well. But yeah, it's going to be heavy, but we got a lot of us. Yeah. So I got to track down Patrick, and I'm going to try and mix some the spent mycelia into the soil. But if we don't have it here, then we won't.
There's some in there. I think someone else has some too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Pretty good.
Oh yeah.
It's mushy, but yeah, there's.
Yeah, that's what the plants for it.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Oh yeah, wow. You're strong.
He is, man. That's why we hired him.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was for my looks. I thought it was my looks.
Well, your looks and your muscles, right, yeah.
Right. But all superficial reasons, I hope.
Yeah, right, yeah. You got a knife?
Oh yeah, you don't want to.
Thank you.
You want half of this?
Yes,
in there?
please. And we got the biochar to throw in there, and then we just start mixing and mixing.
Here you go, thank you. You want this to rot across there as you go?
Yeah. So there's like a couple of football fields worth of surface area right there with the biochar, right?
Yeah. Can have a couple football fields
In each piece. Yeah. Amazing.
Oh, and the other, I can't say I took a shower this morning, so it wasn't a shower epiphany, but my coffee epiphany this morning was we should put a couple jiffy pots full of just pure biochar just in the island and see what happens. Let's see. There's a lot of surface area that some dynamic things could happen in.
We're gonna move in.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Or if you took it to like a very unhealthy pond or a wastewater lagoon, you could feed it with some really beneficial stuff. So it could be good seed
Should we
material
get
as well.
some of that char, put it first in other environments, and then bring it and put it in that?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start out with that environment because it's pretty healthy now. They stopped copper sulfate,
Yeah. Right.
and
Tell me exactly what you're mixing together there.
okay, this is a mix of. So we use coconut coir because it draws up the water, and it might just be force of habit because we're going to be closer to water level with this. But when I'm doing the industrial floating islands, you have to draw it up a few inches, and then there's about 20% compost and worm castings, and then we're throwing in biochar and spent mycelial blocks.
Okay.
So we're having, so it's going to be a very biologically active and dynamic plant, and that's not just for the plant health because the plant roots are going to go down and adapt to that, but it's also just a sort of, I think with this natural materials floating island, we're going to create a whole sort of floating ecology that's going to be a big filter. I mean, even with the with the floating island brand ones, you have that sort of floating ecology, but this is going to be that much more because this will be that much more spread out. So it's going to be. And then the hope was with these things, as the materials we built it out of fail and rot, as they will inevitably, is that the biomass falls down and starts to rot and creates a cover for itself, and the plants interlock, and so the decomposing gases make the island continue to float like a real floating island that happens in nature. And so that's what we're trying to set up here with this, and this is why we're real kind of happy with using the natural materials. And worst case is no plastic will go into the environment as a result of this. And so when this fails, it'll just be something floating there, and worst case scenario is it would float to the edge and continue to work as a filter at the edge of the pond. So it's going to be a lot of really good surface area. And
Jonathan, we should put a whole lot of this mycelia on the K-pot bags because it might grow into the burlap at least, if not into the K-pot.
it might eat the kapok and the burlap.
Yeah, but it'd take a good long time to do it, wouldn't it?
It may stabilize.
You might eat it for dinner.
Maybe.
Did we put rock dust in this?
No, do you want rock dust?
Yeah, let's put rock dust in. Do we want to get people separating plants out and getting jiffy pots out?
I think so.
All right, let me start doing that.
Those other bigger ones too.
Yeah.